You train for the threats you can see, but what about the ones you can't? United Diagnostic Services brings hospital-grade diagnostic technology directly to first responder agencies, making early detection of cardiovascular disease and cancer more accessible than ever. UDS provides comprehensive early detection programs using advanced ultrasound, CT calcium scoring, stress echoes, and innovative blood panels to identify potential health risks long before symptoms appear. It's proactive, on-site, and built specifically for those who serve. Early detection saves lives and careers. Learn more at udshealth.com. Light Touch is a non-medical wellness device designed to support calm, regulation, and more restful sleep in the midst of everyday stress. For first responders and other high-stress professionals, it offers a simple way to support steadier functioning, recovery, and overall well-being. To learn more, check out episode 317 or visit mylighttouch.com. From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto Transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about culture. We're talking about culture all the time, but this specific episode is focused on that. I'm going to open it up with a quote, and many of you may have heard this before, but Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. But it gets more complicated than that. And so this conversation is asking us to think about, how do we intentionally build culture? Does it require some amount of strategy? And I'm very excited to feature two colleagues that I met through the curve. I have Chief Doreen Jokerst and Major Zach Stevens from Overland Park in Kansas. So Chief, Major, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Absolutely. So I got really excited talking to you both, and then I got excited with this idea to feature you both because of cultural leadership alignment. And it's easier said than done. And so when I open it up with that, Chief, do you mind just sharing some initial thoughts to open up this conversation?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, Eric, thanks for having us on your podcast. We truly appreciate it. And to me, you kind of hit it on the head when you said intentionality. I think you have to be intentional when you're building culture within your organization. And I think historically in police departments, it always became a culture by default and not a culture by design, not something that was intentional, but something that came as a result. And to your quote, I just think, if strategy was the map and culture was the engine, you have to have the engine go to make sure you can get to where you need to be. And so I think really from a leadership standpoint, the intentionality around it has to be there, it has to be foundationally in everything that you do within an organization. And you have to put the people first, because you can build out the most robust documents ever, but nobody's going to carry them out if you don't have the people serving in your police department to be able to do it. And so I really think for me, intentionality probably is a big key to this whole conversation.
Yeah, I love that because it highlights the importance of both. But I think you hit it on the head there when you said basically words are just words, but you need people to do it. And it makes me think about how the culture is the how, like how it's done. Zach, what does that kick up in you?
For me, I think about going on vacation, and I think about that we could have the greatest vacation plan in the world. We're going to go to the beach. We're going to go lay on the beach. We're going to have a great time. We're going to go parasailing. And that is a really wonderful strategy for a vacation. But The problem is if nobody that I want to go on vacation with wants to get in the car with me, we're not going on vacation. So we could have the best plan in the world, we could have the best strategy, but if people don't want to go with you and if they don't want to follow you, you're not going to get where you're trying to go. And I totally agree with the chief about intentionality. And I find that culture, I just think, is built in the in betweens. It's built walking in the building. It's built at shift change. It's built when after the calls and everybody's, talking about what happened and in the locker room. It's not built in grandiose mission statements and visions and all those things. Like we could say all those things, but then those are wonderful strategies and that sets the plan. But culture, people have to want to be there.
Yeah, that's such a huge thing. I mean, you're giving these very specific examples of simply how do people interact in the building. And I love what you focused on when we were talking about some of these overlapping themes at the curve, at the massive, when you said, like, can we just start with being nice to each other? And
Mhm,
that's been like such this continual theme that I find myself writing and thinking and speaking about here on the show, which is that it's hard enough. The job's hard enough. Like, how do we just build more? I mean, we talk about these bigger concepts like alignment. How do we just get along and just recognize we're on the same team?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think that's so true, Eric, in regards to it. It's the hallway conversation, stopping and saying hi and how you doing, but actually wanting to know what the person's going to respond with versus just emotion that you go through when you see people that you are conversing with. It's trying to know about people's families and what makes them thrive and setting up those environments in order to do so. So I agree with you. One of the things we talk about here is, briefings. There's intentionality that can be around your briefing. You have your officers and your professional staff perhaps sitting there, and you have moments in time that you can really inspire and set the stage and make sure that they're going out with an attitude of service to our community. Are you using that time for good and for better, or are you just going through the emails and talking about what's on the bolos or what does that look like? How are you setting that intentionality as a first line supervisor in just a briefing and making sure that you're doing that time correctly?
Yeah, that's a great example because that is something that happens for a lot of agencies every single day or just about, right? And are we just mailing it in? And not to say, not to judge, we do have these tasks that commonly come up. But what is the real goal of this meeting? This precious time, you really only get one time a day that everyone on the same shift is in the same space, the same room. So, how do you want to maximize that time? Chief, I want to pivot because we jumped into the deep end of this conversation. I love it. But I did want to ask you about your career and your career progression. And I'm also
Mhm.
curious if there's a way that we can learn about how your perception of culture and culture building has grown through that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So, I've been in policing 28 years. Most of that time has been spent in Colorado, but I spent 20 years at a municipal agency south of the Denver metro area before I became the assistant vice chancellor and chief of police at the University of Colorado Boulder. And there, Eric, was really interesting. I didn't have a background in university policing, but it's really where my perspectives and my shifts really changed. We had these great academics on that knew a lot about policing and public safety, and I only knew it through my narrow lens per se of what that looks like. And so really reaching out to experts on campus, really reaching out to others to kind of talk about how you can evolve and change those things. And one of the things that really then changed for me was when we hired Coach Deion Sanders, right? And so then we started really talking about crowd management and stadium management and what it looks like to have a very large following when it comes to an athletic program and those type things. And so my time at the university for me was one that I really care about, I'm really passionate about, but it was a huge growth opportunity within my career. And going through those different things, Eric, and really just having some great mentors in my life, such as Simon Sinek and Bob Chapman, really helped me focus on, again, you have people serving in your agency, serving our community that day in and day out is someone's mother or father or sister or brother, someone's son and daughter, and they're spending 40 plus hours a week within your organization. How are you taking care of them? How are you seeing them as someone's precious child? How are you really making sure that they feel valued, appreciated, and supported, and create an environment where each individual can thrive? And I think really having those mentors in my life and making sure that the core focus is on that created, Eric, such a great and flourishing, I just say, department and organization because people did feel value coming to work and their work productivity or just the service that they were doing evolves. Because as you know, I just feel like hurt people hurt people. So if I
Hmm.
come into the organization and I constantly berate or talk ill will to my teams, then I shouldn't be surprised that I receive community complaints that my officers are doing that to the communities we serve. And so, how can we make sure that we are leading from the top and setting the example that I want to make sure people feel valued when they come to work? And so, when I meet with supervisors or we promote supervisors, so they ask me my expectations, I say, please ensure that those that serve and work for you feel valued and appreciated when they come to work because it's not lost on us that they miss holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, and everything else. Please know that they are valued, appreciated, and supported, and that we are here to help them with whatever they may need. And the
Yeah.
rest, I say, Eric, comes into play.
Well, thank you, Chief. And you said a lot there, and I would encourage people maybe even to rewind back and slow that down because I could rewind back, listen to that, and build out an outline for a whole article on that, what you just said. But there's a couple things I want to zoom back in on, and we'll come back to you, Zach. But one being the work of Simon Sinek and Bob Chapman. One thing that really sticks out in what you said, a tangible example when you're talking about how do we treat people. In Bob's book, I think it was something to the effect of, is my organization somewhere that I'd want my kid to work? Right. And we
Mhm,
talk about this notion of family versus team. And I'm not here to get into that, but I am here to say, are we creating this culture by our actions, by our deeds, by our words, how we talk to people, how we treat people, like Zach illustrated, that I want someone to work here, like that I
mhm.
feel good sending my loved ones to work in an environment just like the one I'm creating and I'm contributing to. And when we talk about culture building and culture contribution, it is everyone's job, but how much do you start that at the very top and how much does that trickle down to the people that you work with and you're demonstrating you're modeling that.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been with the Overland Park Police Department, fortunately, 18 months now. One of the things I did when I came into a new organization is I looked to Eric for early adopters. Who are the ones that get it, are kind of like minded, believe in the same values of, appreciating our team, making sure that we're providing them the best equipment resources necessary to do a really effective job in serving our community. And that's how I kind of help ensure that it kind of, as Zach will say that the water trickles down to all the rows, right?
Mhm.
Where are we missing it? What does it look like? And I wouldn't say that it's a perfect organization and we still have a lot of work and it's never a one and done, right, Eric? Like I'm not kicking my feet up saying we got this policing and public safety thing. It takes that ongoing intentionality and focus to be able to do it. And so I think it's really making sure that we have our early adopters and talking about these things because then it's like a rock being thrown into a pond and the ripple effects. It starts rippling out into our organizations where other people start then emulating and modeling that same behavior of being nice and being kind and talking to people in the hallways and those type things. And I would say it's one thing I want people's sons and daughters and family members to want to work here. But secondly, I want people to want to come into our organization. And so I just say if a crime was committed, like Eric, they would have to go to your police department if it happened in your jurisdiction. But what if it was changed and they could go anywhere?
Mhm.
Would they want to go to your police department to report that crime or would they not? And I would really hope our community members would want to come to the Overland Park Police Department, not because they had to, because they wanted to, because they knew the exceptional quality service they get from both our police officers and our professional staff doing an amazing job. And if I can get that people say, I actually want to come to your agency and I want to work and serve at your agency, man, Eric, that's really powerful and has the potential of really changing not only our community, but expanding out and just changing the world.
No, I'm just thinking about the movie The Breakup, right? And Jennifer Aniston
Mm,
famously tells Vince Vaughn that she wants him to want to do the dishes. Well,
Mm.
I think when it comes to trying to change culture, we want you to want to be nice to people. I don't want you to have to fake it, right? I want you to show up and I want you to be genuinely curious about other human beings and genuinely curious about their work product and genuinely curious about how they're doing. And is there anything we can do to support them? The chief does ask it a lot, but such a powerful question, and I talk a lot about this, that if you could do one thing to change culture in your organization, it was just ask those in your sphere of influence what you can do to support them because you genuinely want to support them. And she's really talking about the law of diffusion, right? And but the law of diffusion doesn't work if if you're not trying to be nice to people, if people don't want to get in the car to go on the vacation,
Mhm.
nothing actually diffuses if it's not working there. And so I couldn't agree more. And that it goes back to her original point of just being intentional.
Yeah, Zach. So something you said there, it's almost like, and going back to Chief's earlier point, if I want people to be nice to the community, if I want my officers to be nice, what's going to work better? Me telling them to be nice, or else they'll get coached, counseled, written up, whatever, or me being nice to them. Like what is signaling the right thing? What is breeding the type of behavior we want to see? Zach, I'm curious how your career progression has gone, and whether these notions of being early adopters or how do we influence change, how has that evolved for you?
It's evolved. It's night and day difference, certainly from when I started. I started out here in this organization, so I've been with Overland Park the entire time I've been in law enforcement. And when things really started to change for me is when I became a shift commander, and I went to the night shift, and I was in charge of developing brand new first line supervisors, being a brand new commander myself. And I really kind of realized that I had never been trained on how to do that. And so I started looking into it. And so I sought out some additional education on how to do that. And really has become a passion project for me is to now not only trying to figure out how do we drive culture and develop first line supervisors and leaders for our organization, because we know that every piece of organizational leadership, not just in policing, but across the industrial spectrum, we know that leadership drives outcomes. It is just a fact. And if we can make better leaders, we will have better outcomes for the community. And it has absolutely figuring out how to create those downstream effects has become my why as to why I want to come in and do the things that I do every day.
Yeah. I love that. I want to go back to what Chief just said a little bit ago, which was that why would they choose us, or would they choose us, right? If you could shop for your police department. And I've thought about this a lot through the years, especially probably from the time I became a sergeant, but certainly more when I became a commander, which is, would we want our officers responding to this if we could choose our officers versus the other city over versus that one I read about or the one I saw, on a police video?
Now, I optimistically would say whether it's the violent crime or in progress crime, our department can handle it and will still do it in a very judicious and a very professional manner. And I would hope even if it's the stolen bike or a some type of theft, that is still near and dear to that person. And I know my department would still respond very empathetically and very much supportively. And so I do think that you can actually have both. And when I meet with new officers and they say, kind of, what's your expectations? And what does that look like? And really, Eric, it's about how do you survive to a career in policing? And you do that by being able to adjust to those that you serve and seeing what that service needs to look like for that person. But I do think leading with empathy, leading with a servant mind helps in any of those situations, regardless. I do think that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about training new leaders, Zach, and you're talking about building out that program being the role essentially being thrust upon you, you're like, I need to figure out how to do this. It makes me think of David Marquet and this concept of leaders build leaders. And that is what we want, right? We want it at all levels. When we think about our officers out there, they are leaders. We do want them to think very critically, very independently. We want to decentralize that. We don't want them asking Sarge everything. Hey, should I do this? This person's about to attack me. What should I do? Did you have any key insights looking back on that people can think about, regardless of what their rank or role is now?
I think some people get intimidated by leadership development or by leadership because they think that they have to have this, like all the right things to say. But look, the reality is people watch patterns, not speeches. And again, it really, the equation is pretty linear. It's how you treat people. And it's exactly what you said earlier. It's if I can demonstrate that I'm showing care and compassion and that I care about your development, that there is a trickle down effect that then you now feel the freedom to care about the people beneath you. And it's just such a powerful thing to be intentional about the actions and not worry about the speeches. That's why I think, talking about roll calls earlier, and what happens in those roll calls is so impactful and how it sets the tone for the entire shift. If all we're doing is showing up and we're reading emails and we're saying, okay, go do your thing, I mean, how unmotivating is that? But if we're showing up, we're saying, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? What can I do to support you while you go out and support the community today? They may stare at you the first couple of times, but eventually they're going to start answering that question. Because I remember the first time the chief asked me that, and I was like, everything's great. you know, but eventually I'm like, okay, all right, you want to know? Here's something you could do. And it's so it takes a couple of times, but people will start to believe you, and that's a powerful effect.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Chief?
No, I think he answered it very well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to strategy. We talk about culture. We're giving a lot of examples of what that looks like. Simply, how do we treat people, and how do we treat people out in the public, and how do we internalize and actually put these words into action, as Zach just said. Can you tell me a little bit about the Leadership Forge program?
Yeah. So Leadership Forge is a has been a bit of a passion project as a structured leadership development program designed to intentionally build leaders at multiple levels of the organization. And I think that's really the key for us. It exists because, like we said earlier, like you opened with, leaderships, it can't be left to chance. It has to be intentional. And so Leadership Forge basically starts the day you walk in our door. And it starts with what we call Module One. And Module One, you get assigned a mentor, and that mentor is an informal mentorship. It's just designed for you to have somebody, kind of a battle buddy, if you will, to talk to and help you get through training, help you get through FTO. I know for me, FTO was one of the more stressful periods of my career. And you're constantly being evaluated. So having somebody that you can talk to that can help you through that is really important.
Mhm.
Module two is what we call STEEL, and STEEL stands for Strength Training, Ethics, Excellence, and Leadership. And that's really our book club model. And we've evolved it over time. It has started out as just kind of a basic book club, but then we started incorporating writing assignments to try to hit different levels of adult learning. And now we're also incorporating our sister agencies around us where we're now learning collaboratively and learning regionally because, if, and totally, completely stealing a great idea from the chief, but if we train together regionally for SWAT and for investigations and for traffic and all these other things, why don't we train together for organizational culture and leadership? Because those things are just as important at driving outcomes as those other things are. So that is STEEL. Module three is our what we call our supervisor readiness program, which is a program that's designed not just for our commission staff, but for our professional staff as well, to where we try to take new leaders and intentionally give them on the job training and the support that they need to be successful in their job. And the very last part of Leadership Forge is from your formal promotion at first line supervisor. Post 1 year, you go through an actual structured mentorship program, which we very gratefully have modeled off of our colleagues at the WD. And they were kind enough to share some of their documents with us. And, at the WD-40 company, one of my absolute favorite things about them is you don't work for anybody at the WD-40 company. You play for somebody. Somebody's your coach. And so you don't ask who's your sergeant, you ask, hey, who's your coach? And I love that from a lot of different levels, but mostly in how we're treating people and what's our outcome, what's our goal, right? No, there's no athlete in the world that became successful without a coach. And so why don't we do that with police? Why don't we do that with professionals? Why don't we say we want you to be the best you can? So you need a coach. And so that's my favorite thing about that. And that's been baked into our executive mentorship program. So Leadership Forge starts from the day you walk in and it carries you all the way until a year past your very first promotion.
That's fantastic. What a crash course. And I think that, again, that's an opportunity for people to listen back and maybe take notes on how you can actually take this very elusive thing, this huge topic, this huge word, culture, but then how do we build a strategy to ensure it? And you talked about starting it right at the beginning. And I think that says a lot when you start that at the very beginning. Oftentimes, when people have asked me about recruiting, because that's a role I had for a while, I made it hugely about intentionality and building relationship and giving people time, right? Giving people time and setting them up for success as a candidate, as an applicant, because I wanted to signal this is how we care about you as a person. Like when you get hired, we will continue to give you time and investment and patience and support because we want to walk you across the finish line. We want to be right there on the sidelines cheering you on. And I hear a lot of that. I hear a lot of that not just in concept or in ideas, but in actual organization framework. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I would add on. to both your guys' points, I mean, we should be providing a psychological safe environment for people to thrive. And so I love that we do it at the onset because to me, retention starts at recruitment. And so when I hear sometimes we have a recruitment issue, I always think to myself, do you have the recruitment issue or do you have a retention issue as well? And you have to look at those collaboratively and just together. And so I love that we started at the beginning and I love that it goes past promotion because what got you there is not going to get you there. And so having some intentionality around leadership development past the point that they get promoted. And so one of the questions we talked about was after someone gets promoted, what kind of training do they have? Well, they have technical training. So here's how you approve a timesheet, and here's how you approve police reports, and they do those things. And I'm like, how do we tell people how to have crucial conversations? How do we tell people when to provide feedback and when's the right time? How do we make sure that they know that their primary goal is to make sure that people feel valued and appreciated? And are they focusing on those things and not just the technical outcomes? And so I love that we put some structure around it. We're now working to make it evidence based by doing some pre and post surveys. What does this look like? And I would just say for any organization that is looking at starting something, we're more than happy, Eric, to share anything because, as Simon says, learn from your worthy rivals. Maybe how we do it, you can tweak it, change it, upend it, and it works much better for your community and your department in a different way. But we got to learn from each other and grow from each other. And we're more than happy to share what may be working here. You might be able to take and even improve that we can learn from you in the future too with how it evolved.
That's huge. And I'll be at the front of this list because I'm learning in real time and this won't air for a little bit. So I get to hit you up for those materials first. But there's a lot that you said that connects back to Zach's point and what we're talking about here, which is development, leadership development, right? A lot of times it's a class, it's a certification, but to the point of the Forge program or Steel, right? That module where it makes me think of a phrase I use all the time, right? Iron sharpens iron. It's the same as learn
Mhm,
from your worthy rivals, right? We all make each other better. And back to what you said, Chief, which is that we can't rest on our laurels. The moment
mhm,
we're resting, we're stagnant. We're corroding because the world is changing. The challenges of the community and the opportunities are changing. So if we think we're good to go, we are not. And
mhm,
I sense this, I hear this, and I see it in what you're putting out and what you're building, which is that you're not satisfied. You're not kicking back and putting your feet up. There's continual work to be done. And that goes back into this continual theme we've hit on a few times, which is how are we signaling that? How are we modeling that? How is that looking in real life? Because if leadership development starts with the individual and we're a department of leaders, then we all have to continue to hone our skills and develop our craft. And so I love how you are both illustrating in real time, but tangible examples of that.
Yeah, and I would say the best leaders, Eric, are the ones that are forever students. So, regardless of rank, I am still learning every day. I learn from Zach, I learn from my deputy chiefs, I learn from officers and professional staffs by just having that insatiable curiosity. Is there a better way? I got hired on in policing in the late 90s. And that probably worked then. But if we're still doing those same tactics, using the same technology, siloed systems, then that is not meeting the needs of our community in 2026. And so if you're not evolving, you're becoming obsolete. And if you're not open minded and having that insatiable curiosity to move things forward, then all it does is stagnate your organization and provide less of a service to the community. And so, yes, never resting on your laurels and ensuring that forever student mindset of who's doing what and what does that look like and can we evolve it here should be that growth minded mindset that all of our leaders have within public safety.
Yeah, I love that, Chief. Zach, anything you want to add to that?
Well, you had said that, we send people to classes, and I think, there's a place for those, but I think, the reality is culture is built in the everyday reps, and that's one of the things I really have, loved about our program is that it is an ongoing thing. It never stops, and it's constantly evolving, and Lord knows we have been through some reps and some and really we've had some failures as we've gone along, right? And we've been able to learn from those, and we've reached out. That's how we got in touch with 40. So I would tell anybody who's listening to your podcast, if they've experienced failures, don't give up. There's a way forward, and you just have to be open to continuing to seek that out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different threads, but I think that is a continual thing for those that are very growth minded. They're very progress minded. They're thinking, what's the new idea? What's the thing I can integrate? When you say something like a book club, I know certain departments have it, and other people I've heard them say, I would love to do that. I'd be really worried that it would fail. And so, without going in the weeds on failure and what that might look like, I love that what you said is encouraging, right? It's not about winning all the time. It's about trying and finding a better solution. Do you have something that you
Mhm.
can offer for that, Zach?
Well, it's just like the chief said, we have to have a safe environment to do that in. And I think that is one thing that we, as particularly in police, have a difficult time with because we always say we always win, right? But when it comes to organizational culture and leadership, you have to realize that you're not going to win every battle. And but that's and what a great teacher. Hey, that didn't work out so well. And maybe I need to go back and I need to source some new material. And but you have to have the environment to be able to do that in that where you're not going to just, I think the term is freedom to fail forward, right? And that has to be institutionalized. And again, that's built in the everyday reps. And so when your officers are dealing with the public, we also have to realize we also have to offer the public the freedom to fail forward, right? And most of the time when they call us, it's the worst day of their lives, and we're coming in and we're dealing with them. Then nobody really wants to call the police. And so, if we're as an organization offering our officers and from an organizational culture standpoint the freedom to continue to fail forward, and they offer the community the freedom to fail forward, that becomes a really wonderful cycle.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm thinking about that notion to always be right or to always win, and that can be really slippery. That can be really challenging, right? I'm thinking about as a younger officer, a lot of times I felt like I couldn't say the wrong thing, and then if I said it, I'm like, well, I said that, right? Rather than walking things back and saying, excuse me, so I feel like we started off on the wrong foot. I'm sorry how that probably came out.
Mhm.
What I really mean is this. And a lot of times people want to meet you. They're like, okay, no, that makes sense. It's all right. We can move forward. Like, let's have a constructive conversation. And what a healthy, helpful theme to have that in a workplace where you can say,
Mhm.
hey, I got this idea. And I can think in real time of one of my commander peers was like, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, yeah, it sounded better in my head. Thank you. Right. Like it's iron sharpens iron. But
Mhm.
Chief, do you have thoughts on how people can truly support this culture of psychological safety? Because I think it is one of the sounds great in a lot of police departments. I think it's not common because we can be really terse, we can be really callous at times and cynical.
I think you have to emulate the environment in which you want to see. And anybody can do that within their own sphere of influence. You don't have to be a chief. You actually don't even have to be a supervisor. Anyone in an organization is as a leader. As you know, it's not defined by rank. And so, what can I do within my own sphere of influence in those to make sure that I'm providing a safe space for my fellow employees, my fellow team, that if they want to have a conversation, they can. They should be able to speak, authentically and be their own self. And so I really think it's about emulating those environments in which, for me, I want to see cascaded out in my organization. And so I like when my teams have authentic conversations, and I like when we have healthy discord, is what I call it. I
Mhm.
don't want everyone just to say yes if I have a terrible idea. There's many ideas I've had where I'm like, that was a swing and a miss, but at least we got up to bat. And what else do we have? And so I like having those conversations and doing it in a way that by the time we're done, we all agree with what that outcome looks like, and we try it. And so I just think we have to create those environments, and I do think they start to cascade out, and those that are doing it the way policing's always been done and are not evolving and changing, sooner or later they elect maybe to self-select out, or they don't have as wide of audience as they thought, and they start saying, hey, this stuff isn't such a bad idea. I can kind of get on board and see what that looks like. And so, and welcoming them. One of the conversations I had with Bob, and when he talked about failure, Eric, is he was like, Doreen, sometimes it's like this. It's like you're driving a bus. And I said, okay. And he goes, and when you stop at the stop, you open the doors, and you have to be as respectful to the people that went off, as respectful to you are as the ones coming on the bus.
Mhm.
And I said, okay. And he goes, if only 5 people show up to your first book club, well, that was 5 people in your organization that you're investing your time with. That's going to help do the ripple effect and get it out. And then you keep driving and you open the door. And if a couple people went off, you equally respect them as to the same ones getting on. And it's going to continue to cascade and move forward. And that analogy has just really stuck with me. And so I say, even if you start a book club and two people show up, well, that's two people more than what you had in your organization that you've now identified. And so I always see those as a win. You're opening the door, you're allowing people to come on who want to do so, and you're providing them that time and attention and that service to them as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic because, Chief, you outlined exactly the prevailing theme on the show, which is leadership at all levels, but also we all have a vote. We all have a vote of what our culture is. And if you want to conceptualize it like we have these micro cultures, sometimes I've been a part of a squad that's really healthy and collaborative, and I've been a part of a squad that was not, right? But
Mhm.
I have a vote in what that looks like. And if my positive little circle is me and this these one or two officers I go to most calls and I spend most of my day with, if I can show up positively and help them be a little bit more positive, then that's a win. And something like a book club, it could be literally sharing out an article or a blog or a podcast with your squad mates or with your crew. If two people listen to it and you guys have a discussion and it's super constructive, then that's fantastic, right? And I love that theme of inviting people along. Zach, what does that kick up for you as we kind of bring some of our themes and ideas together?
Well, I'll tell you, I was thinking when you're talking about, psychological safety, and I know it's a very, some people kind of roll their eyes like that's a buzzword, but it's absolutely a thing. And one of the things we actually are embarking on right now is we changed our training model this year and to match a different schedule, and that was a big undertaking. And we switched to more of a weekly or a biweekly model because we know that the more recent research in adult learning and training is, ongoing reps create retention. Whereas, like, once a year doing like a DT training, you really might as well not even do it. So when we did that, we got a lot of questions like, what's that going to look like? How are the cars going to get where they're going to be? How are the people going to get to the facilities they need to get to from different stations? And I told them, I have no idea. And I said, I don't know. I said, we're gonna figure it out. And it may be a little bumpy and it may be rough getting there, but eventually, through trial and error, we're going to figure it out. But what we know is that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. We've got, data to back up this idea, and it's okay if it feels bumpy for a while. But that is that environment that we try to intentionally create, that we know we've got a good idea, we're going to run on it, and we don't necessarily have to figure it all out right now. Sometimes we like to talk about the idea that we like to build the plane in the air, and that we don't have to sit there and taxi around all day long. Like, at some point we got to take off, and there could be some rough winds ahead. That's okay. We're going to get through it. But that's why I think a psychological work environment is or psychologically safe work environment is so important, because it helps propel good ideas to get fleshed out and to come to fruition.
Yeah. That simple saying, I don't know, that humility that Under
Mhm.
Sheriff Chris Young demonstrates and is spoken about so much, just in real time, just being honest, like,
Mhm.
hey, I don't know. We're going to figure it out. I have some sergeants sometimes that ask me, hey, do we have a plan for this? Are we working on this? I'm like, yes, right now, because you brought it up and we're going to talk about it. Right. And so I think it's empowering. I think it allows that humility, but also it's like, hey, we don't have it all figured out and it's okay. Like, as cops, we
Mhm.
want to know, we want to have contingencies for everything, but we're going to figure it out. This has been such a fantastic conversation. I need to be mindful of time. I could keep going for hours, I'm sure, and I could keep drawing out pearls from both of you. But why don't we start with you, Chief? As we bring it all to a close and we've covered a lot of ground, what would you leave the listeners with to think about?
I think I would probably end with where we began. Be intentional about the culture in which you set. You have the ability to influence that. You have the ability to affect positive change within your work environment, within either section or division in which you work in. And so I would do that because you will create a positive ripple effect within your organization that will carry out. And so I would end it where we began, Eric. That's what I would say.
I love it. Thank you so much, Chief. And Major Zach Stevens, how about you?
I would say what kind of like what you opened with, and we talked about a little bit at Massive, which was just it doesn't have to be a complicated issue. If people are wanting to know how to change culture, you just start with just being nice. Prioritize being nice to people. Prioritize your supervisors being nice to people, and just be genuinely curious about people and just ask questions. How, again, it's a simple question. What can I do for you today? How can I support you? Those are very easy things you can do that have a huge impact.
Yeah, I
Mhm,
truly believe it. It's a butterfly effect, and you can grow this
mhm.
hurricane of positivity from the simple flappings of just being nice to somebody. Thank you both so much. Y'all are both on LinkedIn for people to reach out, and I'll have contact info in the show notes. But thank you for this meaningful conversation.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.